Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome and happy Friday. I'm so excited to join you live today. I am Dr. Melissa Gallagher. I'm a naturopathic physician, and now every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we have our Natural Health News live show where I update you all with COVID news, all different types of data and research articles and things that I think might be helpful news for you to disseminate and articulate how to keep you and your families healthy and well. And on Fridays, it's our Q&A Friday, which is our live show where I answer your specific questions. So I pull, Instagram is on and Facebook is on this live show. And I have many of you who have written to me. I have a lot of questions here and on the feed. So we'll be getting to those. And then also your live questions here. So I just want to welcome each and every one of you. I am really excited by the downgrading of our show in terms of going from 6 days to 3 days. I feel I'm able to better manage our schedule. So I appreciate all of you and your flexibility. At one point there for I think 3.5, 4 months, I was going 7 days a week. But there's just a lot of information to keep you all updated, especially regarding COVID. So welcome. I see a lot of familiar faces, Lori and JP Soso and Pat, our wonderful moderator, and Sheila on Instagram, and Lori and Clyde. Good morning, everybody. Jenna and Letitia. I'm so excited to see all of you. So we've got a lot of news, and I'm excited. I'm going to share with you some research. It just hit. And you'll probably hear about it later, especially this weekend. But this is clinical research, actual data on that Russian vaccine. We'll talk more about that. We've got some information on the CDC. And so let's dig in. Okay, and first of all, if you are new and you're joining us, if you are watching on the live, there's a live chat and you guys all engage, and we have a wonderful community. So you've got a support group of folks who are frequent viewers. If you are watching on the replay, there is in the description box a little notation where if you just want to surpass all the COVID news because you're sick and tired of hearing it, I totally get it. You just click on that timestamp and then we can get to the questions. So, but I encourage all of you live and on the replay, comment down below. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I love always kind of seeing where everybody is tuning in from internationally. Okay, so let's get right into our news. So right now, worldwide, we have 26.3 million cases of COVID, and the US is at 6.25 million. I want to talk to you about international news right now in the COVID world. Brazil surpassed 4 million. So they have 4 million cases. India is almost at 4 million. Next week, they will move into the 4 million mark. And Russia surpassed 1 million. So this has all been news since Wednesday. And I also want to highlight that Mexico is conducting trials of the Russian vaccine. And the Russian vaccine, it actually is labeled Sputnik V. And you may or may not know that. They probably won't get references to that, but that is what we've got research from the Lancet. So also, Italy, their former prime minister, he's been sick for a little bit, but he's suffering with pneumonia in both lungs, and his name is Berlusconi. And then also 12 schools in France have closed because of COVID outbreaks. Also New Zealand, that had touted they had over 100, they hit the 100-day mark of no COVID cases. And then literally like the next day, 101, 102, they started to present with 1, 3, 8 cases. One of those individuals has passed. And so they've had their first death in now over 3 months. And then I do want to highlight worldwide, we now have some totals. We have lost 7,000 healthcare workers worldwide to COVID exposure. And so I just want to highlight this because they're our frontline. And I know many of you who watch me and follow me are frontline workers in all different categories, and your family, spouses, children are as well. So I just want to highlight this, that our healthcare workers are putting themselves at great risk. Right now we have the totals breaking down. The US actually does not lead this category. Mexico has lost the greatest quantity of healthcare workers. They've lost 13, just almost 1,400 healthcare workers, 1,300 Actually 1,320, so it's not close to 1,400. The US has lost 1,077 individuals. The UK has lost 649, Brazil 634, Russia 631, and India 573. So there are obviously trends. The countries that have higher cases have higher quantity of healthcare workers touching and in working with individuals with COVID. But I do want to make a note, Mexico is the only country that is not in the top 5 in that listing. The other thing, before we really kick off into additional news, I have to make sure I mention this because sometimes I forget. 3 things that I want to highlight, and there are links in the description box below. There will be on Instagram when this all wraps up. Number 1, there's an awesome Alzheimer's docuseries coming out. It launches next week. And if you have family history, like we, in my family, my side of the family, we have Alzheimer's was a big, an illness that struck my family with my grandmother on my mom's side. And this docuseries is led by the clinician who wrote Grain Brain and just an amazing brain, a medical doctor who focuses on brain health, but he also drives in to communicates food, nutrition, healing of the brain. And also, we don't know a whole lot about the brain. So if you're curious about that and want to learn more, there's that docuseries that's launching next week. And this is a free docuseries. It's 9 parts, very similar to some of the other ones. And then the second thing I want to highlight, Aaliyah, which is my favorite skincare company. You can buy all their stuff online. They have all green beauty products. Like this is the lip gloss I'm wearing, my Clove and Hollow. Just awesome things. I wash my hair with all their stuff. My face products all come from Aaliyah, and they're having their Labor Day sale. And so that is a definite stock up kind of sale. So I have a link down there. It's an automatic sale, so you don't need a code or anything like that. And so I want to highlight that. And then also, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the vaccine things that are going on in the vaccine world. There is a docuseries about that, and I have a link down below. So definitely do check that out. And, you know, I think anything that we can do to continue to educate ourselves is in our best interest, and to obviously weigh all the data. You know, with the docuseries, I don't have an insight in terms of I know who all has been interviewed, but I don't know the subject matter at hand. I haven't done any editing, but definitely do check that out. So Lori, that link is down in the description box below. Okay, so let's dig into the US. We have had, you know, no sort of movement in terms of states overtaking another state, but we continue to have rising numbers. In some areas, some states are dipping a little bit. Some of that's due to a lack of testing, a community that is not focused on testing. But we are seeing California still at 727,000. They continue to post 5,000 or more new cases a day. And they yesterday had a really bad fatality day. They had 167 fatalities. Texas also is in that category. They actually are a state that again posted substantial numbers and are routinely posting numbers, but most important, they're increasing fatalities. So they had a 202 fatality day yesterday. So we lost 202 Texans from COVID yesterday. Florida also, we're seeing a little dip on the Florida numbers, but they still continue to have high fatality quantities. So they had 149 fatalities yesterday. Georgia is kind of still in this stagnant, like between 2,500 and 4,200 cases on a daily basis. We had a higher, but not super high, but we had 73 fatalities. And then Illinois, there are pockets in Illinois where we're seeing some outbreaks as well happening. I do want to make a note that the AAP, and I believe I printed this for you all, the Academy of Pediatrics, they posted, did I print that? I thought I printed it, but maybe it didn't get, well, there's new data out by the, yeah, it doesn't look like it got printed. hold on, yeah. I printed a lot of this stuff this morning, but the American Academy of Pediatrics actually posted the latest data on children, pediatric cases. And so 19 and under is what's considered pediatric. And the numbers are from the middle of August to the end of August. The ending of August, that date was the 27th. And 30 states have had increases overall, let me just backtrack. Overall, children's cases with COVID have increased by 17%. And 30 states now have 10% of their caseload consist of or are part of the 19 and under age group. Why that's important is that kids are going back to school, daycares are reopened, parents are sending their kids in, universities. I mean, if you're an 18-year-old and you're on college campus, you get categorized in that minority, or not minority, but that younger group. So that is something to be aware of, that some of those numbers might not truly be children, 5, 6-year-olds, but it might be some of those cases from the university campus life. The other thing I want to make a note, because I promised I would keep up to date with South Dakota. South Dakota is a hot spot. So South Dakota and Iowa, they are the epicenters right now of increasing cases. They are, South Dakota, the same state that hosted the Sturgis bicycle rally, which, by the way, there are now 300 cases linked to that rally. There has been a total of 1 fatality. So a person died midweek, and 1% of all participants there have tested positive for COVID. There's a lot of discussion that number will increase, and it might be reflective of this kind of statewide average. But I also want to highlight that one of the things the state's looking at is they're only looking at the numbers of their hospitalization rate with ICU beds. And so right now, only 6% of the ICU beds that are being utilized are COVID cases. And so because of that, they've decided they are going to host their state fair. And so they're going full steam ahead with their state fair, no mask mandates, same type of requirement as Sturgis. And on average, that fair gets 250,000 participants. So that might be another super spreader event. And that is a concern as we see some of the return to political rallies and things like that. These are potentially super spreading events. So, if you are in a public setting and are going to be around people for more than 15 minutes, you must really be cognizant of taking all the right precautions. Okay, so let's dig into the current kind of strategy that we're seeing just administratively here in the US. Current strategy right now is to focus on herd immunity, which does not exist. Even Wednesday on our live show, I was talking about a new research that highlights, it was an Icelandic study, so it's followed Icelanders, and it assessed that the antibodies in Icelanders, it actually lasted up to 4 months. And so, that is great for that 4-month period of time, but longer term, we just don't have all the data and all the information to know for sure if exposure equals herd immunity. But I also want to talk to you about the very ghastly shockwave producing information that came out from the CDC, and it was posted privately and it got leaked. But it is information that was aimed at the states and talking about planning scenarios for phase 1 of vaccines. And the goal, and this is what I want to highlight, it is several pages. This is what it looks like. And I will make sure I post links so you guys can print this out, read it for yourselves, make your own kind of assessments. But it gives several scenarios. And basically what it does is it's trying to highlight the planning scenarios that should be used by state and local jurisdictions to develop operation plans for early COVID vaccination when vaccine supply may be constrained. And so it talks about these scenarios in terms of potential COVID vaccine requirements, early supply estimates after vaccine product approvals, and populations that may be recommended for vaccination during the early period. And they literally lay out COVID-19 vaccine landscape is evolving and uncertain, and these scenarios may evolve as information is available. They say planners should assume that by January 2021, significantly more COVID vaccine will be available for distribution, and plans will need to evolve to address additional vaccine availability. So they give 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, vaccine A demonstrates sufficient efficacy / safety for EUA in 2020. And they talk about, they literally put in here the date. So they have end of October 2020 as one of the options, end of November, and dosing quantities. So, and then they go to the end of December. And they talk a little bit about shipment, handling. One of the challenges with some of these vaccines is they have to be really, really cold, like ultra cold, like negative 70 degrees Celsius, which is pretty intense in terms of how do we transport this and how do we keep it viable at negative 70 degrees. So they talk a little bit about the orders, the administration of it. All of these are going to be 2 doses within sometimes 2 weeks of each other. And then the prioritized population, healthcare professionals, essential workers, national security populations, and LTCF residents. So those are the long-term facilities, nursing homes. So that's phase 1. And then phase 2 is vaccine B demonstrates sufficient efficacy / safety. So I do want to kind of put this out there. The headlines on this is that, oh my gosh, the mandate, there are vaccine mandates, there's a rollout plan. This is very much one of these, like, who knows what's going to happen in terms of the timing. One, they've identified we have to have sufficient efficacy. 2, they've identified dates, but then they say it's based on early supply estimate. Now, we have to be realistic, friends. These companies are mass producing these vaccines right now. There is not, excuse me, not just a national need, there's an international need. So that production is happening. There are 3 that are in phase 3 trials. And I think one of the reasons why they have 3 scenarios is that they're looking at you could slot in phase A or, vaccine A as like, AstraZeneca or Moderna or whomever. So I just want to put that out there because it gives, the only thing that it gives are dates in terms of quantity of doses. But, that may or may not happen based on efficacy. And there's more news I'm going to report that hopefully will I'm hoping we'll talk many of you down off the ledge in terms of totally freaking out. So I just want to put that out there. So, they again talk about the shipment of vaccine B, on-site vaccine storage, who all would be, the order, the distribution capacity, and then the same prioritized populations. And so that's one thing that we also have to think about. Are you and I going to have access to this? Unless you fall into this category, more than likely not, initially. Now, phase scenario 3 is vaccines A and B together, both of those, which is definitely a possibility. We might have several things at play. And this has basically combined, the scenario A plus scenario B, and it's all on one page. And so, there's a lot of kind of unknowns here. I will say that, the 2 together, the quantity right now that they've listed, by end of October, we might be seeing 3 million doses, from end of November, 20 to 30 million. And then by end of December, we'd be seeing 35 to 45 million doses. So I just want to put that out there. But the other thing I want to notate is that as this got leaked, the FDA responded that they are bringing in an independent group of experts who are going to evaluate these vaccines. So there's going to be a third-party player or group of individuals who are going to be collectively working together to evaluate safety. And it's a body of experts. Don't know who they are or if they've been chosen, but what we do know is that the FDA is going to be implementing a third-party community of experts. Now, that could very well be a good thing. It could also be, there could be some political elements at play with, making that decision. Who knows? But I definitely want to put that out there, that that's something that we need to understand is happening. And the FDA ultimately, at this point right now, they've got the power to turn on or turn off the vaccine floodgates. But I do want to make a note. So Pfizer, one of these trials, one of the 3 that's in phase 3, their CEO announced that results from their phase 3 trial might be out as soon or as early as next month. So we're in September, next month would be October. So the big question is how soon, like what does that time frame look like, the speed? I will say one of the things that we are seeing is unprecedented speed, unprecedented, processing of vaccines like never before. And with that, this docuseries I have listed down below. I think if you are curious and skeptical, or wherever your stance lies in the vaccine category, I think you'll find that docuseries impactful. So definitely do check out the links down below. Instagram, it actually will be up there. So as soon as this wraps, I'll add that information. But I do want to, I'll tell you a little bit about, I'm going to jump around on my little notes here, but I do want to highlight some interesting things. There's a lot of health practitioners, there are a lot of vaccine virologists, a lot of infectious disease experts really kind of having anxiety over the speed, and rightfully so. We have to make sure we have efficacy, and efficacy, the FDA threshold, they're looking at a 50% efficacy. I'm more comfortable with something a lot higher than that, but not everybody is. And so, that's going to be one factor that we have to consider. But the other thing that we have to also understand is that there is a current vaccine out there that has not gone through any type of phasing other than a very small sample size, and they ran with it. And that is the Russian vaccine that's called Sputnik V. The Lancet has published research, and the Lancet is, this is a very, very well-renowned publication. And so data that comes out of them is well backed. They just don't publish anything. This is peer reviewed. I want to highlight that, they talk a lot about this they say we did 2 non-randomized phase half studies at 2 hospitals in Russia. And so they talk about this study. And so it was published by the Lancet. The Lancet didn't do the study, but the Russian, this is all the Ministry of Health of the Russian Federation in Moscow. So basically what they did is this is the trial, and this is the scary part for a lot of us who understand infectious disease and vaccines and things like that. They've launched a vaccine and it's out there, and the World Health Organization is interested in rolling this out to other countries. And there are trials in other countries like Brazil right now with this. There were 76 patients only, 76, that's it. 76 patients, non-randomized, okay? And 100% of these people developed antibodies. And they announced that this week, they've kicked off what they hope to be a trial of 40,000 patients. Currently, they have only recruited 3,000 to participate in this trial. So, that is the example of the non-scientific way to roll out a vaccine. But there's a lot behind this. There's a lot of money. There's, a whole bunch of things at play. But this study talks a little bit about the immunology or the antibody development. And so it is very interesting. They're really clear, straightforward, that it's non-randomized and that there are 76 participants in 2 of these studies. Is this enough? They talk a little bit about the median cell proliferation and the the side events were mild and there are no adverse events experienced. And so, this is one of these things that we're hoping to avoid here in the US. They may get really lucky and this might turn out to be very helpful. But this randomized trial is very interesting that after the fact of rolling it out, now they're going to be doing this, hopefully a trial of 40,000 people, but it's already out on the market. So that's a jump in the gun kind of scenario. Okay, so that being said, and again, if you guys are curious about any of that stuff, check on the links, awesome docu-series that you can learn more. I do want to notate some things about college. Universities just across the board are dealing with COVID. UGA, up in Athens, Georgia, they have had some outbreaks. Our neighbor's daughter's back at home, so I think they pulled her and she's doing virtual classes now. But one of the things that has happened is the collegiate, the different groups, like Pac-12, for instance, they've struck a deal with a rapid testing company. And they are looking at if they implement very much like the NFL and the NBA, that they might end up bringing collegiate sports back before the date they had said they would stop all athletics up until January 1st of 2021. So that's kind of interesting. Testing is obviously a critical element in that. The second thing that's pretty exciting is there's research out of vitamin D. University of Chicago, I didn't print it, but University of Chicago Medicine, they assessed COVID patients and all of them had tragically low vitamin D levels, and that they extrapolated that low vitamin D increases your risk of having COVID, but it also increases your risk of it being moderate and severe. So vitamin D, love, love, love that. I've got a lot of information. I will make a note. I didn't post it, but I have a vitamin D testing guide. Let me write that down, testing guide. I will post a link to that. I also have home kits that you can do a little blood spot and we can mail it into the lab and you can find out your D levels very easily. So again, this is more and more research. Last week, there was additional research about vitamin D. We now have about 5 or 6 that I've highlighted to all of you about vitamin D across the board. Low levels equals moderate and severe COVID and puts people at greater risk. So that's kind of interesting. And then the last news that I've got to share, actually 2 bits of news. The FBI apparently has rated the nursing homes, their nursing home group in Pennsylvania that had the largest outbreak. There were a total of 447 positive cases. 73 nursing home residents died within their community. And it was the worst outbreak in Pennsylvania. The FBI is now investigating. They raided the nursing home this week. And then my last and final is that update of the Maine wedding, which was a super spreading event. I reported earlier in the week that they had 65 participants at the wedding. We're now up to 143 individual cases from wedding and secondary, tertiary exposure. So that's just an example of how a small little group gathering together for an extended period of time could equal a super spreading event. So I'm very excited. Let me write this down. We're going to get to questions. And I'm going to use my phone as well because my printout didn't print everybody. But I'm going to pull your questions, and then any questions you guys have, just ask and comment in the comment box below. If you guys love this information, give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate that support. Okay, so Jana Taylor sent me a message. She said, if you have time for another one, oh, I guess she sent me 2. Hold on, let's see here. Well, the one question she had is, let's see, what is a good magnesium level on blood test? It depends on what people are looking for, or not looking for, but like what your, like what type of test you're taking. There are several different ways to measure magnesium. It's usually Mg/DL. And the normal ranges, I will say this, a lot of labs will post normal values and they range, but that doesn't always mean that that normal is good for you or not. So what we usually say 1.7 to 2.2, and it's Mg/DL is going to be normal. Now, some labs will say 0.85 to 1.10 mmol/L. So that's just the kind of metric unit that they're using to measure. It does vary based on the different labs. And so you want to assess, is it the mmol, MMOLL, or is it the MGDL? So that's number one, find out which of those, and then you can assess. Because if you're looking at, the MMOL/L and you're at 1.9, you'd be, and if you're using the MG/DL as your guide, you'd be like off the charts, but that wouldn't be accurate. So I do like assessing blood as primarily the serum evaluation. Optimally, it depends per person, but I prefer to see people closer to 2 because of the low levels will be indicative of a lot of swelling and fluid retention. So I hope that's helpful. I want to get to your other question. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so more questions. Okay, so we've got, so Jana's other question, how much milk thistle should I take for liver issues? Okay, so milk thistle has an amazing ingredient or chemical in it called salimirin, and it's very beneficial for liver detoxing and depends on how your methodology of taking it. I personally love to take liquid herbals, like Herb Farm is one of my favorites. Let me just write this down because I can follow up with a link for you all. But a liquid tincture, 40 drops of the milk thistle. It's standardized. It's very potent. I take milk thistle with dandelion, so I take those two together. Lori said, what was the company that was in PA? I don't remember. I didn't write down the name of the nursing home, but I could get that for you. Okay, so now let me switch over to, I have like three different technology pieces here. Okay, so on YouTube, we had some questions over here. Okay, so let's see. Katessa77 asked, for Candida, is it better to eat raw garlic or is the supplement okay? That's a good question. It kind of depends on your preference. I find that supplementation of garlic can actually deliver you sometimes more potency of garlic and you get like the good nutrients out of it. Where if you are eating a lot, you're going to have a garlicky smell. Not everybody loves garlic. Like I actually love to cut the garlic clove right at the top, just kind of at the top, and then pour in a little like ghee and toast it. And then I'll just eat the cloves that way. I find that I have less of like an intense fragrance from, you know what I mean, from the garlic. So that is one thing. I will also say, like in the beginning, when I was in my early 20s and dealing with being sick, I would juice that stuff in the morning. I remember like walking in the office and somebody's like, oh my God, I couldn't even smell it at that point. Like I had been so taking in so much garlic that it like canceled out my ability to smell, you know, and they say like smokers can't smell. I felt like I was in that category. Like I couldn't even smell. It was like this garlic plume of, craziness. So I thought that was kind of funny. Okay, so the other question, Katie Casey, supplements please that can build up my heart function after Herceptin and Perjeta injections. Okay, so I love CoQ10, and I actually have a lot of video content, especially here with COVID, about heart health. CoQ10 is critical, hawthorn berry. You know, there's a lot of parameters when you're taking that type of medicine for the type of treatment that you're on. You know, there's a lot of variables we need to rule out. We need to rule out any blood clotting. We need to rule out certain things. But, you know, CoQ10 across the board is so beneficial. You know, I would for sure make sure you're more than likely you're getting tested for your K2 level. So make sure they tell you what those are. Those tend to be lower with those types of, you know, post-cancer treatment and post-cancer meds. Okay, so hold on, let me see. I have some more questions. Oh, and by the way, today is a day off for Gabriel. We still have his tutor coming, but he is relaxing at home and he is so happy. He's got 4 days of no school. Okay, so healthy is the new happy 66. What do you think about COVID and I think mucus? I'm not quite sure what that question is related, specifically about, if it's about symptoms like mucus and COVID. But I will say, one of the things when we're dealing with mucus, when a lot of people talk about mucus, they think about it in the sinuses and the respiratory, upper respiratory. We know COVID really targets the sinuses and it targets the throat. And those little spikes to the virus, they get in there and they infiltrate. And the body's mucus production is often an immune response. So, I always try and make sure we're eradicating all mucus in the body. Mucus is a harboring point for bacteria, yeast, healthy and balanced, bacterial levels throughout the whole entire mucosa. We have mucosa up in our sinus cavities, in our eye, in our throat, our stomach, our intestinal tract, even our vaginal tract for women. And so it becomes really critical that we harness mucus reduction. And part of that's eliminating dairy, eliminating gluten, adding in ginger and turmeric and things that will reduce mucus levels. So I don't know if that was thoroughly helpful, but okay. Nico, she says, hi, what's the best and safe supplement you would recommend for thyroid dysfunction? To be honest with you, gosh, there's so much at play. Like, you have to know what type of thyroid dysfunction. Some people have autoimmunity, Graves and Hashimoto's. Other people have mild subclinical subclinical hypothyroidism. Others have full-blown thyroiditis, inflammation of the thyroid. Whatever category you fall in, you are more aware of that than I am, but I actually have protocols. Oh, it looks like, hold on. My Instagram is, the connection's bad. Okay. So I would recommend checking out my protocols. They're on my website, and they get really specific, because it's just really hard for me to answer that type of question when I don't know the details. And to be honest with you, this month I'm going to be opening up my schedule to take appointments again. So I'll be back in the virtual appointment world with all of you. And so many of you, we can dig into that further. But, I will say the one supplement that I absolutely adore, and again, I don't know your situation, but Thyroid One is my favorite. I'll post a link on that one. It's such a great product, and we sell it in my Full Script store. Okay, so let's see. I've got one other question here. Let's see. Hold on, you guys. And definitely do ask your questions below. I will be able to answer those this morning. And if you like this, give me a thumbs up. I see we've got several groups of people on here. Let's see. Our internet's running really slow. It's buffering. Yeah. Hopefully YouTube isn't buffering. Okay, Marina, I'll go to some of these questions as this pulls up. Marina is asking, what do you recommend for estrogen dominance? I love seed cycling. I love progesterone. It depends on the degree of dominance, but what I often find when I'm testing folks is they will have low estrogen, but they have even lower progesterone. And so it's one of these like crazy things. You can have low estrogen and still be estrogen dominant because that ratio between estrogen and progesterone is really critical. I would say, Marina, you're going to really benefit from my hormone webinar that I'm launching this month that will dig further into how to deal with all of those factors and then the role that estrogen dominance plays. But one of the best things you can do to eliminate estrogens, both like xenoestrogens, these harmful estrogens we get from our skincare, which, by the way, I'll plug Aaliyah if you want to get rid of really toxic hormone disruptors, buy everything in their store because they've got great skincare that eliminates chemicals. And so we get estrogen from not just our body, but from food, the animals that we're consuming, animal protein, to some plant estrogens can overwhelm us, like soy. And so the one thing that I love is recommending omegas. Okay, so let's see here. Let me get back to this. So the question, I have 5 questions on YouTube. How often should we do lymphatic massages? It was listed as messages, but it's massages. I have some swelling on my face, in particular on my left. so if you're doing it on yourself, I actually just incorporate my skincare routine with my drainage process. And so, when I'm washing my face, I wash in kind of a lymphatic method. And I have free content here where I showcase how to do a lymphatic drainage massage of your face. That eliminates the puffiness and swelling under the eyes. I also feel like it helps with, limiting my wrinkles. But so that would be something I would do daily, twice a day. Butterfly Girl says, help, I have vitiligo. I was on Benequeen and Kaiser stopped my treatment, and now the pigment is returning in patches everywhere. Is there a natural depigmenting agent? I'd have to look further into this. I know that there are a lot of harmful chemicals that are, but just naturally, I think overall with vitiligo, there's a lot of inflammation. And so, lowering your inflammation, supporting your gut health is going to be one aspect of resolving some of the deeper systemic imbalances. Second one, Emily Easton, 2 questions. She says, I have PCOS and hypothyroidism. A week ago, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. In 2 weeks, I find out if I have Cushing's as well. In the instance that I do have Cushing's, how do I go about addressing and healing it? And 2, she says her 4-year-old has horrible digestion. She always has. Would a probiotics be beneficial? Yes. Okay. So number 1, PCOS and hypothyroidism, they're all together. So Emily, you're going to love my thyroid or my hormone workshop, this webinar I'm finalizing. They're all wrapped up together. Endo, PCOS, hypothyroidism, they all work synergistically in a negative way. So, you want to individually balance each of those organs. As far as Cushing's, there's a lot at play there. But, supporting your stress management and supporting your adrenals, some folks are going to need glandulars. And so there are some really great glandulars like Dr. Wilson's entire product line in my Full Script store. I'm on another one that I'm taking that's supportive. Okay, Shalay says, good morning, Dr. Melissa. I wanted to get trace mineral drops now on the market. There's one type that has extra boron in it. Is that beneficial? I have autoimmune and adrenal fatigue. Right now more so, especially with autoimmune, zinc is really critical. So I recommend my zinc forward trace minerals, more so than boron. That gets a little bit kind of wonky depending on your levels, but zinc for sure is going to help support the immune system. And then Vipla Chopra says, sure shot remedy for stretch marks removal permanently. Gosh, that really depends on where they are, how long they've been there, the depth of them, your age, your skin elasticity. Collagen is my favorite. I love collagen. Here's the thing. There are some things in our body that we can really offset and minimize, but we don't always have the full capacity of fully correcting. And stretch marks, it's more beneficial before an episode. Like when I was pregnant, I use all these amazing products from Earth Mama, and they had the like stretch mark belly oil stuff. And I mean, I put that stuff on all the time and like 0 stretch marks. But I have friends who, I didn't get as big as other women, but I have friends that got really big, and some have stretch marks, some didn't. And so there's genes in your skin typing that plays a role. But, ultimately, collagen is helpful. And then I actually really love, microneedling. And so that is something you can employ. I would do it yourself. I wouldn't have anybody else do that, especially in that area. Okay, so I think those are all the questions there. So let me answer some questions. Okay, WMLCTC4, excuse me, what do you recommend for sciatic legs pain? First, foam roll daily. Foam roll daily. Make sure you're getting chiropractic care, or at least taking care of supporting your pelvic floor. A lot of times our pelvic floors are really weak, and we see sciatic issues because of that, where we've got a pelvic floor that's weak, we get hips that are wonky, and then we see the IT band get really tight, and then sciatic inflammation. But so, CBD, I said it, That's really beneficial for that. And I have links on YouTube. I've got links. You'll see links come through. Okay, let's see. Mary is getting a full body thermography scan. Yay! I love it, Mary. It's awesome. And you can actually, depending on how the woman sets up, or whoever is doing it for you, sets up their little monitor, you can see you getting, your scan. And so a lot of times they will kind of let you look through the slides as they're explaining what it is, which is kind of cool. So just look for white. White is the concern, super red and white. Let's see. Donna says, I've been taking vitamin D3, K2, and sea kelp every night as usual. Yay. Okay. Martha says, I'd like to boost my immune system after breast cancer treatment, radiation, and hormonal therapy. So there's, with post breast cancer, depends on what they've got you on. If they're trying to suppress certain things and you're on like tamoxifen, there are some herbals that we have to stay away from. So I treat every post-cancer case individually. But I really do love astragalus. That's one of my favorites. And then the sea bumblebee D I had mentioned earlier can be a benefit, but you have to check with a lot of the, hormonal therapy. Like there's just a lot that men and women get prescribed post-cancer to minimize the hormones that we're feeding the cancer cells. If you're on those, you have to make sure that you are getting clearance from your pharmacist and definitely some of your, oncology providers. And they're, I will say oncologists tend not to be tuned into herbals, but your pharmacist, they're a good line. Okay, Lori says, Doc, will Inflamex help my ankle that I think I sprained? Oh no, running last night. Yes, it will. And ice, lots of elevation, ice, cool therapy. And okay, so the one thing that I would do, Lori, anytime you're dealing with like ankle swelling, so this is a little lymphatic, I'm putting my lymphatic hat on. Two things that you want to do: dry skin body brushing, but primarily concentrating on your legs. The first thing that you want to do is do circles around your belly button from left to right hip. So you move around. This is probably opposite because of the way the camera is, but left hip over to right hip and back around. Then I would at the joint where the groin and your hip, like the little crease where your leg meets your torso, the hip area, do little invigorations upwards with the brush on both sides, and then focus the back of the leg from the hamstrings up to the butt, and then really hone in on the back of the knee. That will often be a little swollen. It might be a little tender. You might palpate. There's 2 lymph nodes back there. We want to get those open and invigorated for that ankle sprain. There will be a lot of inflammation that occurs. You won't always bruise, but it'll be inflamed because of the healing process. So you want to open those pathways, and then back from the lower part, basically from right where your ankle is, all the way up to that knee and the back area, back of the calf. But there's also a really critical point. I'm not going to show you my feet, but like where your big toe is and your, the next toe, there's this little point right here in between that joint where the soft flesh is. Invigorate that. You can do that on both sides. That's a key reflexology lymph point. That will get things draining. So Inflamex internally, I would also grab, Lori, lymph stim and T relief that has arnica. There's a gel that's awesome. You can also take the tabs, but the gel, T relief gel, is arnica like on steroids homeopathically. It is potent. And I use that post-surgically with a lot of my assorted surgeries, from knee, hips, to plastic surgery situations where folks are doing Brazilian butt lifts and liposuction. And like with that, no bruising. It gets rid of the fluid. It's awesome. So that I hope will help you. And keep me posted on Monday on how you're doing. Okay, so I know I have a lot of questions. What do you recommend for fungus and sinuses? I like saline, and I would also do grapeseed extract. X-Clear, I don't think I have it over here. I do. Oh my gosh, look, I have it. This would be great. So this has some antibacterial properties in it. It actually has data on, it's hard to see here, but they have reduction of bacteria, and it has xylitol in it. And so red is bacteria to articulate iron in the right level. So I also have to look at your labs to see what's your free form or free floating iron. Check that out versus what is being absorbed by your cells. And so that's a key kind of factor. Let's see. Oh, and speaking of strains, I have an update on my puppy Nina, or our puppy. Her labs are all fine. Like we're really concerned about cancer with that breed that she is, flat coats. I'm on a Facebook group and these dogs always get cancer. Like some of these owners are like, I've had it, the pup for 3 or 4 years, and then they get bone cancers. And so we're nervous. And so we had all the tests run and they did urinalysis, and turns out she has crystals in her urine. Everything else is fine. Her wrist sprain seems to be doing better. But I've dug into it further, and I'm thinking we think she's dehydrated. She's been weird about the water bowl. And so we're going to try an experiment with a different type of water. Like literally, if we grab the water bowl to fill it up, she goes running. And so we don't know what happened. But so she's on the mend. I have herbals coming today for her. And I'm really excited. I'm going to also put her on colostrum. And so I'll be talking to you guys a lot more about that. But we think it's dehydration, and she's on a little bit of a dietary change for the time frame. But also because of COVID, I have not personally been the core buyer of her food. And Brian's been running in, and a lot of times we'll order it. But I'm thinking also some of the little changes that we made in her food is playing a role. And so she's going to be on the mend. Okay. Yeah. So Lori says, OMG, pressure point between toes feels so wonderful. Oh yes. That point is awesome. That systemically moves your whole entire lymphatics. It is the magic point. I love that. And it's so easy for you to do. Okay. So let's see. Let's see. Okay. I'm just reading. What is in when you're, let's see, Lydia, I'm not sure if I understand your question. What is in when your level is high, absolute eosinophils? So that's usually some sort of inflammatory immune marker. There's a lot of different things at play, and usually they go looking a little bit further into some of the other immune markers. Pat says Scout was dehydrated. Yeah. That's a good call. Okay. Let's see. I want to answer more questions. Okay. Samira. Hey, Samira. Is Shatavari and rhodiola safe with Hashimoto's? Shatavari, yes. Rhodiola is another one that's safe. The ones that, like for Hashimoto's, and it's cautionary because it kind of depends. Everybody's kind of experience of Hashimoto's is a little different. But with Hashimoto's, I really try to avoid, what is the one that I try and avoid? Sorry, I just had a blank. It's a common immune herbal. But yes, both of those are great. And Shatavari is awesome. Oh, and speaking of, I just want to let you guys know, I'm posting more blog articles to my website. And so there should be a new one up today. But yesterday I posted one about hot flashes. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a lot of your questions and turning them into blog articles to answer those as well. Because you guys are so much of a driving component in terms of the content that I talk about. Mari, am I and my family vaccinated? Well, yes. I mean, I was a child of the 80s, and so I was vaccinated. When I was in college, I spent a summer in Africa and have been fully vaccinated, probably more than most people, to go there. We were doing volunteer work in the middle of nowhere, with no running water, and cholera outbreaks and malaria as a big factor. I also spent time in Southeastern Asia, where I was going to communities where there was a lot of exposure. I volunteered when I was in India with Mother Teresa's Sisters of Charity, and spent a week in the home of the dying, taking care of people. So there are a lot of requirements to that travel. So yes, I am. Brian has, and many of you know this, regular viewers, many of you who don't, he has an autoimmune element, an autoimmune condition where his body attacks his platelets. And so his immune system is very much at risk with COVID and a whole bunch of other things. And so he also, because of that particular condition, is called ITP, he does not have a spleen. And when he had his spleen removal when he was younger, he had this condition. They thought he told, at 2, the doctors tested him in Virginia, and they told his parents, your child either has leukemia or he has this platelet disorder. And from 2 to 6, they managed it carefully. It can cause internal bleeding for young kids. It's a horrible illness. And at 6, he had his spleen, what they thought was a spleen. He had 5 or 6 spleens, and they were all cystic. So he is lacking a spleen. And because of that, we have to be very careful. He does that protocol. He works with the hematology. Actually, the director of Emory's Hematology Oncology works with him. That's his doctor. And she advises him certain, times of the year for certain vaccines or whatnot. But I'm a product of the 80s. That was not a non-issue. We also didn't have the vaccine schedule. I had chickenpox in 3rd grade. Milton Jackson gave the entire class chickenpox for like 3 weeks. It was the best experience I had because I was at home and like getting all this great stuff and being waited on. But fast forward to today, it's a personal choice. And so, and that's really, I think at the end of the day, we have to be educated. I like in my channel here is to give you guys information and let you make those choices. I try not to be in a stance of being in the bully pulpit or, chastising or reprimanding or saying one way is better than another way, because everybody's individual health situation is different. And, I work with cancer patients who have survived, the hell of cancer. And, the worst case scenario is for them to have a compromised situation due to the flu. So everybody's, life and health choice has to be individualized and made up by them. So anyway, and Amber, thank you so much. How do we protect our pets from COVID? Yes, that's a good question. So what they see, the feline category, they're more susceptible. Pets, dogs, there are cases where we've had American dogs come down with COVID. I think just like humans, and I would be happy to share this on like an edited video, but we give the dogs additional supplementation when I can. I haven't done it in a while because it's at this one small store, but I get frozen green tripe, which is awesome for their overall immunity. It is basically the stomach of a 4-chamber, the 4-chamber stomach of like a cow, a sheep, a goat, all of your grass feeders or grass, animals that are feeding on grass, they've got 4 chambers of their stomach to like break that down. It is heavily dense in enzymes and probiotics for the dogs. It is what I used for my first pup that had parvo. She had parvo as a puppy, and literally, I swear I saved her life by some of the therapeutics we did. I did acupuncture, Reiki, and herbals. And she was really rocked with parvo. And we did primarily outpatient. I think there were only 2 days she stayed. Maybe it was like 24 hours. She had an overnight stay in the hospital, in the vet hospital. But that puppy does have residual, there's no way around it. It did impact her gut health. And so, I continue to give them tripe. Frozen's better than the can, but there's a lot of good stuff in that. Let's see. Okay. And I'm going to start to introduce colostrum to them. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Okay. WMLCTC4. What causes a weak pelvis and how can I strengthen it? Okay. So weak pelvis can be postural. It can be surgical. So you can have surgery, C-section, childbirth. It could be overuse, like activity levels. And then it's also structural orientation. So there's ligaments, muscles, and your bone structure that can all be a factor. So you can have impairments where you might have one leg that's a quarter inch longer than another leg, and that skews you. And now you've got muscle imbalances. So some of the best exercises, there are some really great practitioners on YouTube that dig into that. I work with brands that have supportive like compression products or supportive pelvic products a lot of times after post-surgery. But I for sure noticed big changes in my pelvic floor strength post-baby. And for a lot of women, that's a big point where things get just whacked out and never really return to normal. And one of the articles I'm working on right now on my blog is about how like postpartum care completely neglects pelvic health for women. Strengthening it is like, lower pelvic floor exercises where you like sit down and you tilt. So you're doing like pelvic tilting. Even Kegels are part of that, but like literally there are these small little muscle groups that we have to tighten up. And, so it's not like your ab work, because a lot of people are like, oh, abs, it's your pelvis. No, it's like deeper muscles. Oh, Lori, you're so sweet. LZIG or LZJG77. Are there herbal medicines to help regulate a woman's female menstrual cycle? Yes. Shatavari is one of my favorites. I love that stuff. And seed cycling. But if you're curious about whole menstrual cycling, I've got video content on that on my YouTube channel. Let's see. Donna, Dr. Melissa. Oh yeah, ashwagandha. Thanks, cupcake paper. I just like, this is why I'm going down to three live shows a week. It's my brain's maxed out. Donna, Dr. Melissa, any foods you could recommend to help after surgery effects right now? Yes, I have a post-surgical, it's actually a pre and post-surgical protocol. It's the first digital guide I've written. So this was back in, I think, 2014, I wrote it. It's extensive. It's a total of 14 weeks, which is a good amount of time. It's a 2-week before surgery prep and then after, and it breaks out based on, a few days, day of, few days out, a week out, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all the different nutrients you need to heal. So Donna, if you haven't checked that out, I think you'd find that helpful. And I break out the different foods. There are a lot of good foods that you can help that will help increase your, hold on. Oh, sorry, Brian's. Yes, I'm still on my show. So I would check that out, but like there's a lot of food that you can use to help support your wound healing, that can help minimize swelling. The sooner you're able to address swelling post-surgically, the faster you're able to maximize your healing. And swelling generally is the core source of post-surgical grief for people. And the pain that a lot of people feel is swelling that's pressing on the nerves. And then also you need to hone in on, and again, it depends on the surgery. I have some folks that have really intense surgeries, and we have to really make sure that we avoid adhesions and scar tissue development or overdevelopment to maximize the healing process. But food, definitely. I love matcha green tea. There's definitely other options, and I recommend that. Let's see. Oh, thank you. You guys are so sweet. Okay, so 2 more questions and then I've got to run. Donna, second day post-surgery. Okay, yeah, this protocol is going to be great. It actually lists out a whole bunch of things. If I don't have it, I should have a favorites list in Fullscript of like my post-surgical products. I believe I have that. Let me see if I can log in here and see. I see favorites. Okay, let me see if I have that. I'm slowly trying to transition some of the items that I recommend in my protocols into, it's a newer function in FullScript. And by the way, they've gone like carbon free. I'm very excited. They had a big announcement the other day that, let's see. No, it doesn't look like I have done that. I need to add that. So Donna, I'm going to add post-surgical. There's a whole bunch of products that I recommend in that. It's basically like a shopping list. So I'll make sure I do that. But definitely the guide, and I have a ton of surgeons who refer to me for post-surgical healing, and I've been doing that for over a decade. Right foot, ankle, yeah, and the ankle can be really tough. So those same things I recommended for Lori, you can do. Depending on, the incisions and things like that. You want to avoid putting anything on the actual incisions. We can get really close with the T-Relief gel. But, the big thing for you is going to be focus behind the knee and hone in on the lower abdomen, circles around, dry skin brush circles around your abdomen and like where the joint and the hip meet. Oh, bad break. Oh, I hate to hear that. All right. So Tracy says, you've spoken about the CDC downgrading the number of fatalities significantly. So there's reporting out there that's not entirely accurate. They have not downgraded it. It was basically, this is the challenge that we're dealing with. We're dealing with people that want to justify decisions that are not in the public interest. And I am going to get on the soapbox a little bit here, so don't mind me. But one of the things that people are doing is they're pulling data and then they're like re-articulating it and going, see, it's okay. So it is in fact not accurate. There's like a sheet that has to get filled out with, every fatality. And on there's comorbidities. A lot of people have comorbidities. You can go in. So you can, for instance, this happens a lot. You can go in for cancer. You end up having, because of cancer surgeries, you have a blood clot. The blood clot causes a stroke. You die of the stroke. Was the cancer the cause, or was the stroke the cause of death? So on a death certificate, there would be primary stroke. So there's like several lines on that. So stroke might be the one. It might also be a medication. There's medication error. I mean, it's insane. People don't realize this, but the morbidity mortality, it's called MMR, the morbidity mortality rate. Every hospital has a percentage or that rate and ratio. And a lot of those are from medical errors. I can't tell you how many times I've actually had patients, they've had stitches left in their body. They've had apparatus, tools, gauze, like crazy stuff. And so the cause of death, it's associated with COVID, but it might not be like COVID related, if that makes sense. So people go in, and we know, I've reported, we see multi-system failure, we see ketoacidosis, we see, heart failure or arterial blockage or clotting. There are multiple reasons potentially for the cause of death. And so what was happening was that people were not, when people started to investigate and look at the records, depending on who's filling out that information. And if the morgue, if you are in like some areas like Texas, that one county was having like 100 deaths a day. If you're dealing with, that's a lot of paperwork, and you're doing autopsies and all these other things. So there's an aspect where it was the information that was put down. It was also a lack of understanding of what that information meant. And it is confusing and upsetting. And I definitely understand that. And it does cause people to lose credibility. But there's also forces at play that are trying to really minimize all this data that's coming out for whatever reason. But we definitely need to stay focused on the fact that we have community spread, and lower that. And we will ultimately lower our fatalities to this, because there are people that are compromised in assorted ways. Emily says, what's your opinion on the safety of lip injections? I'm not a huge fan of them. I am not a fan of any of those fillers or anything like that. And those get reabsorbed, what is it? The injections that they do on the, for wrinkles and now they use it for migraines. The biotoxin, what is it called? I can't remember, but they do that to fill in lines, and people, you can't see that their expressions, they have expressions. Those Botox. Thanks, Christine. See, I'm totally tired. Botox is definitely, I'm not a big fan of, but there are different fillers. And so some get deemed as natural, but to be honest with you, there's nothing natural, Emily, in that category. If you want plumping, my thing that I found helpful, and this is short-term, is you can use bee venom therapy, or not therapy, bee venom. There are products that will have bee venom that naturally inhibit, or not inhibit, but they create a kind of inflammatory state. It's this kind of like heat kind of thing, and then your lips plump up. But it's short term. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How do you heal the metabolic system? Oh, that is a very long answer. And in fact, I talk about that on my thyroid webinars, or not thyroid webinar, my hormone webinar. So I'll be digging into that. Stay aware and stay updated with YouTube. I'll post as soon as that is live. We're working on the actual mechanics of the system for the shopping cart and all that stuff. Fun times. But I'm finalizing all of that stuff in the next 2 weeks. Tracy, the upset is that blaming the comorbidity doesn't diminish the fact that they died from COVID. Yeah. As if their life doesn't matter, is written off because of comorbid factors prior to getting COVID. Yeah. And so, it's one of those things, it's the perfect storm. You've got all these under layers, but then COVID just accelerated everything. And it is very hard for people to understand that you can have, like, the one girl in the dorm when I was a freshman in college, that was my main mono exposure. And then we attribute that to being the mono that I had, because it was severe enough for her that she returned home over Thanksgiving break, and her younger sibling had chickenpox, and her mono had weakened her system so much that the chickenpox killed her. We came back to, dorm just rocked from one of our good friends having passed from, chickenpox. Like, who would think? And, and so, like, the mono in the same case as COVID would be written off for the chickenpox, but the reality is that it was everything. This was upsetting me since the report came out. I know, yeah, and so there are going to be more of these. I think what we're going to see is more in the vaccine category, and that's very scary. I am very nervous about that. So, we just have to keep our bearings straight. And I appreciate all of you for tuning in, as I hope to deliver a lot of impactful information that you guys can then determine how you want to use that. But, knowledge is power, and also being, looking at the straight, staying factually oriented, scientifically based. There's a lot of swirling stuff. And if we stay on top of the information, I think that helps us kind of get away from some of that chaos that is just there to be chaotic and distracting. What about a Botox shot in calf for foot dystonia? Yeah, I'm not a fan of Botox at all. I think it's too toxic. There are a lot of other options, C, Bumblebee, D. So the second initial is the letter B. I'm not allowed always to say it on YouTube because of censorship. And that also might be true to, talking about vaccines. We might see additional censorship. So I want to be careful about that, but also parlay critical info. But yeah, I would utilize topical, Joey, and internal. And I've got a link in the description box if you want to check that out. They actually have, I think, 20% off with my code, but I think site-wide. But they have this amazing balm that's amazing. Okay, so I've got to run. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. So I'm off all weekend. So no show tomorrow, no show Sunday. I'm back on Monday. So I'm sure there'll be a ton of news to follow up on. And yeah, Christine, we probably will need a code name. We should say Sputnik V. I just thought that was so crazy that they named it that, but we'll figure it out. We'll have maybe some emoji. I'll talk with one of my assistants to see if she can develop an emoji, and we'll just use like our special emoji. It's so crazy. So, but one of the things that I do appreciate with the links down below, and by the way, check out the links down below. There are 2 docuseries that are going to be amazing. One, I'm really excited. I didn't mention his name, Dr. Perlmutter. He's he's down in Naples. He's the guru, the brain guy. I mean, he is an amazing neurologist that hones in on brain health and eating for your brain. He talks about Alzheimer's and how to prevent it, why it's becoming prevalent, all that good stuff. But the other thing too is the Vaccines Revealed series. They're on their own platforms, and so they avoid the censorship. And so, that's another good thing in terms of being able to get out there, because the YouTube it's not a free forum. And I'm well aware of that because of my own experience with the C Bumblebee D. It nearly shut my channel down. And so, I'm totally tuned into that, and I won't ever let that happen again. So that's one of the reasons why you guys ask me about certain topics. YouTube does have some clarity on some health related topics we're not able to talk about, or substances. So I stay away from those. Think what you want, but I treasure this community. I spend a lot of time and energy developing it to educate you all. And, in the next year, my plan is to roll out my own kind of community forum and membership program where I can be free to speak freely about all of that stuff. But until that happens, this is one of my main resources that I invest a lot of time in and cultivating with all of you. So with that being said, do make sure that you guys sign up for any of my free guides, or any of the links. One of the things that, I want to make sure all of you have access to my information and if anything ever happened like before, where I was out for a week, or, I was in timeout for a week. And then the second time I was in timeout for 2 weeks with YouTube. I felt like a kindergartner getting in trouble. But, if that happens, I have email communication that I try and regularly communicate with folks. And so, a lot of my free downloads allows you access to that. So, do take advantage of that, because we'll always stay connected through that format. All right, friends, with that being said, have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. Monitor my Instagram. I'll be posting all sorts of adventures. I think we have a pool day later on today. So I'm gonna have to put on my sunscreen, my sun hat, and get ready. But Labor Day, we told Gabriel the pool's going away after Labor Day, and you get into the fall mindset. So anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great day. It was great to see you all and spend time with you. Bye. Thanks, Pat, for moderating. See you guys later.